Hey everyone, Mark Buckley here again, the founder of the FMA Strength Institute, and back with lovely Ximy Gonzalez. She is the founder of the Bombshell formula, and if you remember yesterday, she owns the space. She is the diva of healing your painful relationship with food and body image. All right, so once again, welcome back, Ximena.
Hey babe, how are you? Thanks for having me.
I'll give you that beautiful intro, and we give me as a hey babe. Fair enough.
Hello, wonderful husband and founder of the FMA Strength Institute in Australia. How are you today?
Oh, fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. All right, so we've got you back for the second interview, and I'm going to read it here because it's quite a big sort of lead-in. But what we're going to be talking about today is, because I turn the page, is breaking the beauty and fitness spell, how to free yourself from the fairy tale of body ideals and the wicked measures used to achieve them.
Yeah, I love that.
Talking about spell casting and how to free yourself from these crazy ideals that people are being convinced are normal and healthy when they're not. So let's get into it, Ximy, because yesterday we went for an hour. We're meant to be doing 30 minutes. Today I'm committed to try and get us close towards that 30 minutes. So let's get straight into it. Tell me, what is it why do you use the word spells? What does that mean to you?
Yeah, before I start, I just want to say it's so uncomfortable to look at the top of the camera, like if I was looking into the viewer's eyes. So I much rather look a little bit down to look at you. It's just a little bit more engaging. So please just bear with me.
All
right, so let's get started. What are spells? All right, I think that one of the best ways that I can explain a spell is through an experience that most people have had. I don't know, maybe most of you have been in a relationship that was not serving you, and everybody tried to talk you out of that relationship, and you just couldn't see through what was going on. You were literally spellcasted, and no, your partner probably wasn't doing abracadabra and throwing bull testicles and frog eyes into a cauldron to spellcast you. But I am using this analogy so that you can see that you are under a spell and you don't even know that you're under a spell. It's later in hindsight that you go like, oh my God, like I just couldn't see. You know, I was just spellcasted. So, you know, if we look at it from more of I guess, a 3D perspective and more of like the senses and a more logical, rational term, we can speak about programming. I think that that's a much more accepted term. I think the medieval word and the more metaphysical word would be spelling. And by the way, hi to everybody. So yeah, so I like that word, the spell, also because we have been spellcasted through fairy tales and just all these stories. And last interview, we were talking about our relationship to power and how we surrender our power. And I think it's going to be really important for the people that didn't get the opportunity to watch yesterday's interview to watch it, because it's going to give you better context to understand what we're going to be talking about today. All right. So a spell is just basically a program. It's basically a subconscious program. You're not aware that you've been influenced. Okay, and human beings are highly programmable, and most of us don't even know it, and we like to think like, no, I'm independent, I'm a free thinker. That's like the cutest thing ever. If we have parents, if we have been to school, if we've been to church, if we've watched TV, if now we've gotten on social media, we've been programmed. And yesterday I shared a story. I'll share it very quickly again, just to show how I learned that I was programmed, especially with the whole beauty fitness spell. And I interviewed an Indigenous person about, you know, what they thought a beautiful woman was. And this person just spoke to me in terms of qualities that described a woman, like she's a good person, she's a good wife, she has a good heart, these types of things. And I kept trying to pull him into giving me a physical answer, like, oh, maybe she's curvaceous or she's skinny, or, you know, whatever ideal. I thought that's what he was going to answer. And I kept trying to ask him, and he just kept giving me the same answer. I thought it was a language barrier thing until finally I realized that that it was me who didn't understand, because he had not been exposed to any of this programming. That's when I realized, oh my God, like we think that all of this is normal. This is just a social construct. It's BS, and it's being created through so many means and in such subtle ways that you wouldn't even think about it.
Yeah, well, it is a big thing. There's a whole area now called neuromarketing, where it's designed to exploit the subconscious mind and to get us to chase the things that we think we want. So there's a lot of money being invested in building out that area of understanding to manipulate, the buying behavior of people. So yeah, it's huge. And I love the way that you do use the word spell and spell casting. I come more from an academic point of view, where I talk about psychology, and I talk about reptilian brain, the subconscious mind, and the paradigms and things like that. And for anyone watching, you can imagine, if you know me, I like to be very academic in a lot of my approaches. So Ximy and I used to butt heads quite a bit with our different way of seeing the world. I came more from a masculine energy, with my left hemisphere and being engaged for intellect and logic and reason. And Ximy sort of flowed in more with her feminine energy and was more about the symbolic rather than literal. And
I'm very abstract in my thinking.
Yeah, and it was very challenging for me, especially when you hear that, when someone tells you you're spellbound, there's been spells cast on you. What the shit, what are you talking about? I don't have spells cast on me. I'm in control of my thinking. I'm navigating the course of my life. I'm the co-creator that determines where I'm going and where I'm moving towards. But it's very, very powerful message. Again, this is why I've got Ximy here, because, when you start to unlock and unpack this stuff, it really changes your understanding and your perception of what you really think the world is about. It was Socrates that said, know thyself. And we can expand upon that a little bit, and let's go from know thyself to be thyself. So many people don't know thyself, right? They think that they're the stories that play from a subconscious level. They think that that's who they are, when really they're not. So how does this happen, Ximy? Like, we're all familiar with being, this spell and fairy tales and all that. But, in the real world, that we navigate today, this isn't a fairy tale. So how are we getting spells cast on us today?
Well, I think that what you were saying before, and I just want to draw on that a little bit about approaching things from both the masculine and the feminine energy. And we're not being gender specific. We're just talking about masculine and feminine traits that both men and women can embody. So it's really important that we do have that conversation, and that we can have that symbolic or more metaphysical conversation, but bring it down to earth. And as I was saying, more of a 3D, logical, rational, neuroscientific type understanding, right? So we're gonna do our very best to do that. And that's what I was referring to yesterday when I was saying that we were going to combine masculine and feminine energy to get this point across. So with the spells, I don't know, but some of you may, or some of you may not know, I worked in the world of entertainment for many years. So my first career is mass communications. I studied mass communications in university in Columbia and journalism. And then I started working as a news writer. And I have this, journalist curiosity. As I say, curiosity killed the cat. I think that that's just like the worst meme that they can say to people. Curiosity is actually what can save us. I'm going to say that. So I first started working as a news writer and an associate producer for a newscast. And then I transitioned into the world of fitness. Some things happened. And then I ended up on TV as a fitness TV bombshell, as I call it. So I got to learn a lot of things. So this presentation and this information that I'm going to share with you is going to come not only from my experience living in the world of entertainment and being like in one of the focal points of the spell casting, but also from the energy of the investigative journalist. And I am going to invite you today, as we were talking yesterday, part of healing our relationship with food, body image, etc., is taking our power back and learning how to parent ourselves. And I think that one of the biggest steps in that is not giving your power away to journalists outside you, but you becoming your own journalist, becoming a skeptic and stop believing everything that you read and everything you're told, because when you really research, you're going to realize that everything that you've been told, you have to do like 180-degree flip. All right. So I think that this is one of the most powerful invitations that I can give to people. And what is an investigative journalist? Just someone who's skeptical and who's willing to go down the rabbit hole. You know, and it doesn't mean just go with the official story. That's BS. That's not journalism, and that has been the death of journalism for us today. Journalism is when you're willing to explore the really weird stuff that nobody's talking about, because that is typically where you really find the truth. So, you know, and if you look at it in the schooling system, you know, let's talk a little bit about how our reality gets constructed. We're given, like, we're really put into this little box. We're just given like these options. We're shown how the world works, and all of the schools, or the majority of the schools, have kind of like same programs. So they fit us all into the structure of how to think. And I think the best way to explain that is through multiple choice tests. Okay, so if I am learning something, you know, and I'm being taught how to think critically, I'm going to be invited to write an essay and have a critical discussion of what I am learning. But no, that is not what's being done, because they don't want you to think critically. They will give you a little piece of paper with 3 or 4 options, and that is it. And you have to choose reality based on the reality that they are giving you. This is a perfect example of how we get programmed and how we get closed down onto this little reality and this little box. And this is why it's so preposterous when people offer a different possibility, you know, and you get outcasted if you even start considering other possibilities. So part of growing yourself up, like we were speaking about yesterday, is having the courage to look at things that may be scary, you know, because staying in an infantilized, disempowered state is that state of fear and learned helplessness. You know, go off and ask the real questions. We were talking about that, Mark, right? That, you know, if you really want to get to the bottom of something, you got to ask the questions. You got to be a journalist.
Yeah. But it's amazing how this comes. It actually is. And am I weaving a lot of echo now?
No, I don't hear it. I don't know if somebody else over there hears it.
Good. You know, I think this is a good time, because I love everything you're saying about being the investigative journalist and critical thinking. That's so powerful, because, you know, self-parenting is all about taking on the role and responsibility of parenting self, asking the hard questions, you know, doing your due diligence before you just rush in. So that's very powerful. But, you know, one of the things that fascinates me, because when you have these conversations, I used to always want to understand why we are so programmable. Where does this come from? Because, you know, when you start understanding things like cognitive dissonance and cognitive bias, you realize that people just go through life, you know, proving and defending the ideas that were given to them. And as one client said it so beautifully once when I had a disagreement with them, well, you've got your science and I've got my science. You know, so we cherry pick the science that supports the ideas that we want to hold on to. This is what, you know, cognitive bias is. And we go through life, you know, trying to always prove and defend these beliefs that we have. You know, so I always wanted to understand that. So if we just take a step back into childhood, you know, there's a very, very powerful saying, and that's by the Jesuits, and that is, give me a child to the age of 7, and I will tell you the man, or nowadays, the person they're going to be as an adult. Yeah. Right? So powerful, because really what happens, you know, in those first 6 years is so critical. And I know that you touched upon this yesterday with this whole concept of self-parenting, but it starts also with how you were parented. You know, the role of the mother was to inspire, the role of the father is to validate, and to teach you how to self-inspire and to self-validate. So as an adolescent, when you get that initiation to adulthood, you can actually go off and self-parent.
When you're supposed to, because you don't get it typically.
Yeah, so let's talk about what happens in that first sort of 0 to 6, because that is so critical. And for anyone who's listening who's a parent, you know, you really want to not be distracted in this part, because what we talk about now is going to be so important for, you know, the mental, emotional, spiritual health of your child as they go forward in life. So, so let's talk about that first sort of 0 to 6 for me, where I know you're very passionate about what happens.
Yeah. So my understanding is that, during that time frame, 0 to 7, you're pretty much like a sponge. And the thing is that your parents are gods. Like your survival is completely dependent upon them. And they are giving you the skills to survive. So there is an evolutionary advantage to you being that little sponge and absorbing everything they tell you, because they're giving you the tools to survive the world. Now, that, as I said, serves a role, but the way that it's done today is we're just being downloaded with just so much manipulation and so many lies, and we've built our sense of self, we've built our identity, we've built our social construct, everything around this, and we've been given. We were not invited inside ourselves to self-explore and shape the world according to our experience of it. We were given our experience of the world, and that's what we were talking about yesterday, that we were taught to externalize power and rely on authority figures outside of us to tell us how to navigate life, instead of being invited within, so we can self-explore, we can figure out who we are, or we can remember who we are, and we can navigate life from that energy. So it's a combination of things, and yeah, it is a time when we're highly programmable. Now, you're gonna have to help me out a little bit in this area. It's not my forte, although I have somewhat of an understanding, but it is my understanding that during those first years, our brain operates primarily on theta waves. Is that correct? And that's what makes us very programmable, and that television has a certain frequency that has been patented, and it puts us in that same, like almost like hypnotic type state.
Yeah.
Am I correct with the waves?
Yeah. So just quickly unpack that a little bit. With adults, there's kind of 5 states of awareness, and alpha is our conscious state. So right now we're predominantly, if you look at an EEG, we're predominantly operating in an alpha wave, all right? Because we're consciously focusing on this conversation. Now, when you go back and you look at a child, in around 0 to 2, it's operating predominantly in a delta state, and then from around 2 to 6, it sort of upregulates a little bit and it operates more in a theta state. Now, the key thing here, guys, is that delta and theta are subconscious states. All right, so this is why children 2 to 6 operate a lot from imagination and reality, because they're walking around in a very sort of unconscious state or a trance state. So this is how nature sort of supports the development or the enculturation of the child. Because you got to think about it, when a child's born, right, there is so much to learn in order to fit in and be socialized with the group, to fit in with the tribe. There's a lot of things to learn. So by having these brain waves predominantly at a theta from 2 to 6, the enculturation process means that all their experiences and observations are downloaded into the subconscious mind. And this is where our views and ideas come about, because on the one hand, it's very beneficial. It allows us to download a huge amount of information very, very fast. But the downside to that is that all this is happening before your conscious mind is developed. And your conscious mind is the part of your mind that can accept and reject ideas. It's the part of the mind that can critically think, which is what we talked about before. So this poor child, right, is downloading information at a rapid pace into its subconscious mind, and the subconscious mind cannot differentiate between right or wrong, good or bad, evil or safe, all those sorts of things. It just believes everything it's given by its significant others through observation and experience. So a lot of these ideas that we have, and this is the real sad part, if you look at most psychologists, they'll tell you that around 95% of the ideas that we hold are these subconscious beliefs, and these subconscious beliefs are, very disempowering, self-sabotaging, and limiting in nature. Right? This is the problem. So we're walking around only operating around 5% of the time out of our conscious mind, the part of us that can actually make choices, it can accept and reject ideas. But the moment, and you see Ximy do this a lot when I'm talking, you'll see her get distracted, she'll phase out a little bit. Right? The moment that we phase out of the present moment, we go into our subconscious programming. So you imagine now, 90 to 95% of the time, we're navigating life through our subconscious programs, And those subconscious programs are predominantly, as we said, like limiting, self-sabotaging in nature and disempowering in nature. So this is why a lot of people are stuck in this very, very negative cycle of having everything they don't want in life and not having any of the things they do want in life.
Yeah.
So, and that's why, like, when you understand, that's why the Jesuits said, you know, give me a child from up to the age of 7 and I will tell you the man that person's going to become, because of the power of the programming. So that's the first part. Like that, when I got that, that completely blew my mind. You know, everything has a shadow and a light side. So we understand the light side of that happening, but there's also the shadow. So, you know, children really are at the mercy, you know, of the influence of the parents. And in fact, this stuff is so crazy. I remember listening to Bob Proctor about a year ago, and he was talking about the programming of the subconscious mind. And he talked about, there was an example where a child was adopted by a family, a young girl, and even though she had no genetic attachment, you know, to the parents, because she was, you know, adopted from another family, right? Just being around the vibrational frequency of that family and the mindset installed to her in relationship to this particular family, which was breast cancer, right? She had breast cancer like the other kids, because it was an idea that was given to her, which is genetic predeterminism. I will get breast cancer. And, you know, that's a self-fulfilling prophecy. And she actually developed breast cancer like the other females.
That's a spell. That's a spell right there. That
is a spell. Yeah, and tell that story too of, you know, so I know that you love, like, listening to a lot of Kara Meister stuff. Mm-hmm. And, you know, she's an intuitive healer. And I remember you telling me that even how we could be academically, like, gifted, like we could be someone with a PhD in psychology, that doesn't protect us from the spells, does it? Tell about that story that you told me.
Yeah, it was hilarious. She was telling a story of actually a psychologist. She had a PhD also, like very, very skilled, and she's Latin. So I can relate to this because we have a lot of superstitions. You know, obviously not everybody believes in them, but, you know, but we have a lot of superstitions around our culture. And I think that some of them are kind of like across the board. So this lady, super logical, rational, and then she's walking one day past her house, and she sees this lady who everybody believed was a witch, and in the neighborhood. So she saw the lady looking at her as she was walking by, and then she became obsessed and convinced that she had been given the evil eye and that she was under a spell. Like, we call it the evil eye, mal de ojo, and that she was under a spell. And this woman could not snap herself out of it, no matter what she was told. It was there. She was hypnotized. You know, that's, I think, another word, hypnotized.
Yeah.
You know, and I think I want to bring this back to our bodies, and let's talk about words, okay? Because if we look at what we call the act of writing, it's spelling. We are spelling. We spell with our words, or we spellcast with our words. So now let me give you an example of how you can tell you're being spellcasted. Have you ever been under a situation where somebody said something to you and you literally felt a shot of energy pass through your body, or you felt like it hit you in the gut, or, you know, like something, but you had a physical reaction, or you felt such a deep level of shame that it dropped your vibration and it made you feel heavier than anything on the planet? You just got hit by gravity. Boom, it pulled you to the ground. Like, you can feel these things, or you felt the energy leave your body, you know? Or if somebody has said something uplifting, you know, maybe this can, you know, give you levity and elevate you. This is the power of words. And I used to curse so much. Mark would always tell me, you have such a potty mouth. You have such a potty mouth. And there's a reason why we call it cursing. You know, when we are using foul language, we are cursing. So we've got to be so aware of our words. And I'm actually really working on that, because, like, I don't want to do that. And, you know, and the truth is, we're being spellcasted, and we're spellcasting every single day. And you know what? This is another example. Go to your Facebook wall, post something controversial, you know, and just wait for all the negative comments to come through. and read those comments, something that's really offensive to you, and just feel the body reaction that you get when you read these comments. It's like something sinks into your gut, you know, just read it and you'll see what a spell is. Now, yesterday we were talking about learning to stay centered in our power and not give our power away to these types of things, you know, and how to do it and how to get centered in your power. But this is across the board. So we have to be very aware of, you know, people say, oh yeah, I pay attention to my diet and that's going to make me healthy. No. You know, it's not just what you put in your body in terms of food and chemicals on your skin or all these things. It's also the energies that you allow to penetrate you, not just through words, but through music. And I'll give you an example of what I'm talking about with music. Have you ever found yourself singing a song that you don't like and you completely know the letters, the lyrics to, and the melody, and you're la 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 in your head, and you can't get it out of your head? That's another form of programming. I'll give you another form of spell casting or programming. Mark and I, we love to cook together. And we do like to watch sometimes, you know, TV. I'm actually there like doing an exercise, observing, analyzing as I'm watching. It's not TV, by the way. It's just, let's say, a documentary or a series or a Netflix or, you know, whatever. And I'm observing, you know, and I think I'm so smart and that I can be beyond this and stuff. And I'm sitting there watching my thing. And then one day Mark and I are cooking and we're playing jazz music. And then I said to him, oh, wow, it would be nice to have a glass of wine right now. And then I went like, oh my God, under a spell. I hate wine. I don't drink alcohol and I don't like the taste of alcohol. And here I am. And I'm thinking, where did this come from? And then I remembered that what we were watching, like every single freaking scene involved a glass of liquor, but particularly when there was like a romantic scene and they're in the kitchen, it was the freaking wine. And I'm like, what is this? Another example. What happened the first time you smoked a cigarette? If you ever tried a cigarette, I got so nauseous. I was probably like 14 years old. I got so nauseous and so dizzy. But through product placement in Hollywood, I had already made the association that smoking was cool. So what did I do? I lay down in bed, waited like a little while until I could get myself up again from the nausea, and I lit another one to teach myself, I guess, how to be cool. I don't know, but if you think about this, what does somebody's breath smell like after a cigarette? How is that sexy? I mean, it destroys your body, it wrinkles you, it damages your health, everything. How is this sexy? But yet we have been programmed with that. And if you look into the beginning of advertising, and you look at, it was Freud's nephew, Bernays was his name, if I'm not mistaken. He took a lot of Freud's work and he actually used it for advertising, and he became one of the biggest names in advertising of his time. And one of the things that he did was he organized a march where he was promoting cigarettes, and it was a female liberation march. I think it was in the early 1920s. So be a feminist, free yourself. Right, boom, association, cigarette. How does that make you free?
Yeah, you know, when I was a kid growing up, I used to want to be a cowboy. So all that imagery of the cowboy, the rugged man smoking, you know, got me interested in going, well, I need to smoke. But then I was lucky enough, I saw the movie Brokeback Mountain about cowboys, and it put me off being a cowboy, and I didn't want to smoke again after that. No.
But I guess you can get the picture.
Yeah, this is so important, guys. Like, you know, and before I touched upon this whole thing about neural marketing. All right, there's a lot of money being spent to understand how to manipulate the subconscious drives or the paradigms that's going to determine the buying behavior of people and how to manipulate the buying behavior. Right, this is huge, and you know, imagery is so important. This is why, you know, I say we've already touched upon conscious parenting.
Imagery and symbology.
Yeah, so we've already touched upon conscious parenting, right? Remember, for all you parents out there, from the age of 0 to 6, right, the children are downloading every experience and observation they're making. So they're watching how you interact. They're forming their ideas around relationships by watching how mummy and daddy interact, how they talk, how they respect, how they honor each other, right? They're observing and downloading all this sort of stuff. So conscious parenting is big. If you want your child to be healthy, then you've got to understand conscious parenting. And you've got
if you want your child to be healthy, you need to be healthy, because
and that's what I was doing. Yeah. So in order to do that, right, remember, you can't give what you don't have, and you can't share what you haven't experienced. This is why every person that wants to have children must first heal their relationship with themselves. Now, that's enough about that. We'll talk about that stuff later on in other upcoming talks as well, and unpack it even further. But then the next important thing is be aware that your subconscious mind is predominantly downloading everything that it sees, it hears. In fact, visual information, right, if you look at it, the optic nerve has a rate, or has a speed of around 40 to 50 times faster than the auditory nerves, straight back into the reptilian brain, or the paleocortex. So what we see, guys, is at a high rate going straight into our subconscious mind. This is what marketing understood about the power of imagery. It bypasses our filters. It goes straight into our subconscious mind. And they know how to manipulate that. They know how to present the information, so we buy into it. We start to believe it. It's these associations, right? At the end of the day, we're all the same. We all just want to feel good. So they create these associations between, do this behavior, here is the outcome, you'll be popular, you'll be successful, you'll be wanted, you'll get that promotion. And we learn these associations, right? And we learn that if I smoke, then I will be accepted, I'll be seen this way, I will be popular, right? And that becomes a paradigm, it becomes a behavior, right? The behavior or the action is to light up a cigarette, and the association or the result of that is I feel good because I'm accepted, I'm the cool kid. And these associations become very hard to break. So visual is very, very important. One last thing, because I know Ximy's dying to say something. So one last thing I'll just say, guys, is when it comes to psychology, because I love psychology, all right? We've got to be very mindful of the visual diet that we're on, because what we consume visually goes straight into our conscious awareness, or our consciousness. Right?
We don't digest it.
Right. Think about your children, right? With the internet, who is parenting them? Because I'm telling you now, do you really want the internet to be parenting your children? Because they're sitting there downloading everything they see. It's going straight into their subconscious mind. It's forming their understanding of self and the world. All right. Do not let the internet or the TV parent your children. You need to be the gatekeeper of what gets into your children's minds. Right? That's number one. And the last thing I'm going to say before I hand you back over to Ximy, because I said I won't do too much talking, is there is a thing which is called the cognitive adaptation theory. And that basically means that our preferences will start to change based on how much we see something, or how much exposure visually we get to it. So they know this, right? Neuromarketing knows this. The more they can bombard us with a certain image, the more this cognitive adaptation takes place, meaning our preferences start to change, and we start to align with what we see or what we get the most exposure to. So be aware of that. Again, we don't think we're being programmed, but here's the thing. Programming is happening below the radar. It's happening at a subconscious level. You don't actually make the choice of going, do I want to accept that visual information right now? No, it just gets in, and through repetition, we start to change our preferences and move in the direction that we've been.
We lost Mark. Can you see me?
Yeah. All right. So just for the sake of it now, all right, I've got Ximy here with me, so we'll have to finish this interview together. So thumbs up. See, it's here. It's fine. It's something happened at your end on the computer.
Okay.
All right. So we were talking about what we see and being the gatekeeper that's into your mind. And so this is so important, like what we see. So Ximy's going to talk a little bit about the symbolism. So I said, I introduced you to the understanding of how the mind works at subconscious level and etc. I've kind of lost my flow a little bit, but I'm going to pass you over to Ximy, and she'll talk more about the symbolism and how powerful that is at manipulating and casting spells on people.
Yeah, so basically we're talking about programming through association. And so I think that's really powerful, and I'm going to give you an example of this. Like when you look at, for example, models, okay, and you see somebody that's super, super skinny, and then around that skinniness, you attach attention, you attach wealth, you attach sex appeal, basically you tell yourself, or you're being told a story that if you look that way, that is the one-way ticket to the promised land of the perfect life, where you're going to be rich and skinny and this and this and that. And women tend to build their sense of self and their identity around this, and they want to pursue this because they literally feel that they need to look this way in order to not only survive, because it means acceptance and attention, and we want to be significant, right? So it's very dangerous, like what's been happening. And I remember back in the 90s when I was growing up, and in the early 90s, and all the supermodels became the it thing, and we all wanted to be like them, we all wanted to have their lives, whatever. I always dreamt of being on a red carpet and this blah, blah, blah. And then, funniest thing is, like, because of my work, I eventually did 2 red carpets. One was 2 for the Billboard Awards. And not because I was singing, but just because I was a TV host at the time. And the first time that I was on that red carpet, like, I had just started my career, so nobody paid attention to me, the photographers. And it was like the most embarrassing and horrible experience. But then the second time around, it was completely different. But it was just like a second. And then the rest, the party was the most boring thing, but we build this idea in our heads. And it isn't until we get there that we actually see the reality, and just like my colleagues and everybody just obsessed doing all these diets and, pinching their faces, doing all these things for that photo opportunity, because it would, give them exposure. And I was actually working on TV when we turned to high definition. And this was like the apocalypse was coming. Everybody went into a panic because now, you were really going to see everything, and the makeup couldn't do such a good job. So these were the things. And this, after that, like, women really started to play around with their faces and, all these things. And so, this is part of the beauty spell, because, like, this is what you see on camera, and you see these women looking like that. Some of them are absolutely, like, naturally, like, have the frame, but then on top of that, they do things to themselves, the makeup, and then, in some cases, a lot of cosmetic surgery. And we are building these bodies or manufacturing these bodies that are not realistic. And so women are consuming this, and they're seeing these images of these unrealistic bodies with all of these associations for power and success and this and this and that. And this is the message that is coming through, and how do I know it's a spell? Well, when you challenge it, when you challenge women with these things, they will prove and defend like if you were attacking their child. It's like I've had cases where I had a client who had breast implants, and she had them for a really long time, and she was having like a lot of health issues, and like everything she did, nothing worked. Like nothing worked. And not conventional, not alternative, not nothing. And I just suggested, I said, listen, like in your forms, I just saw that you have breast implants, and all of your symptoms seem to be autoimmune. So could there be a possibility that this could be, and this was also like 2 or 3 years ago when the whole breast implant thing, illness thing hadn't exploded. And yes, it's anecdotal. They haven't proved anything yet, whatever. But there's so many cases, so many women complaining. And I just presented this possibility to this woman, and she freaked. She was like, oh my God. And she went into like a whole crisis of self, because now she felt like her husband wasn't going to like her anymore. She felt like everybody in her circle had them. Like it was just like this thing. Her entire sense of self was put in question. Like, do you understand how serious this is? Now, I know that this is a very touchy subject, and it has so many layers. And especially with this thing with the breast implant, I do want to touch upon that right now. As I mentioned yesterday, I was, made fun of, like when I was working on TV, because I didn't have breast implants and because I didn't have breasts. I don't care. I love my small breasts, okay? I never got surgery for many reasons because I never felt, even before I heard of the term breast implant illness or anything, I just thought it was saline, you know, whatever, and silicone, and I thought there was no problem with it, but still, like, it just didn't sit right in my gut, right? So I didn't do it. And I'm actually glad that I did not. There is a group called Breast Implant Illness Awareness Group. There's almost 60,000 members on Facebook. You can check it out. There's also a group on Instagram, Breast Implant Illness. Actually, there's many groups that are coming up now. And these are women who were getting really sick, and they went conventional, they went alternative, they tried everything, nothing worked, and then they removed their breast implants and their symptoms started to disappear gradually. Now, correlation doesn't mean causation. The implants are safe. I've had conversations with plastic surgeons and they basically almost swore on a Bible that they were safe. And then now, like, again, once you go down the rabbit hole and you start researching, you start seeing that, you know, you got to be very, very skeptical when somebody tells you that something is safe, and especially if you're going to put something in your body. Just because an authority figure that has been to school and has been programmed with God knows how many spells as well to sell stuff, it doesn't make it an absolute truth. You know, it's just part of the program, which many people are under, including a lot of professionals, or including, I would say, all professionals if we've all been to school. So, you know, so the truth is, and these women, I feel, are being gaslighted. Why? Because they're coming up and they are showing, you know, like with other doctors and other researchers and other scientists, they are showing, you know, that there is something to this, and they're just trying to shut them down, tell them that there's no science to back that up, instead of being motivated to doing the research and finding out exactly what is going on here, what's happening behind this. So this is a spell, you know, like when, and you know, how do we know we have a painful relationship with body image? You know, when our sense of self is so attached to the way we look, you know? So yeah, like,
yeah, move over. All right, so very powerful stuff. So yeah, as we're kind of building up this big picture, remember we said yesterday, we're trying to allow you to see things through a different lens, to start asking questions. Now, we've talked a bit about how the programming starts as children. The concept of conscious parenting is so important. And I just want to add a different element. So we're going to move away from this whole principle of, process of enculturation, which is the delta and theta waves and the hypnotic state and the spell casting. But the conscious parenting is also huge. Remember, you know, the role of the mother is to inspire, the role of the father is to validate. And what often happens is that children just need a few things. And one of the main things is they need attention. So they need connection. Now, when connection is taken away, it brings up a lot of fear around rejection, right? Again, going back to the subconscious mind, the reptilian mind, or the paleocortex, whatever you want to call it, going back to the tribal days, all right? Connection and the need to not be rejected was huge. So there's a couple of things that dictate how the subconscious mind works. One is the need for things to be familiar, all right? So again, you imagine going back in time and you're in a tribe, right? We were afraid of things that weren't familiar. It was the us or them. You know, when we see someone who wasn't part of our tribe that we didn't know whether they're to hurt us or to help us. Were they friend or foe? Were they an us or them? So we liked to stick with what was familiar. It was safer. We didn't like to stray and eat different types of food because it could be poisonous. So again, we liked to eat what was familiar. Right? We needed connection, because connection has allowed us to be a part of a tribe. Because again, back in those days, if you were pushed out of the tribe, then you were going to die. Right? We needed to be accepted as part of the tribe. So again, the reptilian brain is so fearful of being rejected. Like, rejection is one of the biggest fears that people are inflicted from today, the fear of not being enough. Now, tying that back into conscious parenting, right? Well, when you have a child and you don't connect with that child and you don't show any interest in who that child is, right? You're not present to them. The child learns that inside them or within them, there's nothing of interest or value, because mummy and daddy never ever chose to sort of connect with me. So therefore, there's nothing of value inside me. So right now, that child's learning I'm not enough, right? I'm not pretty enough. I'm not good enough. whatever their story is, it usually comes back to I am not enough. And that causes children to externalize their idea of self and seek validation external to self, which is what Ximy talked about in that first coaching call, the first call yesterday, right? So we start giving our power away to authorities. And guys, this is huge because again, remember, freedom is about having self-esteem, not others' esteem, all right? When you need other people to tell you how to feel about yourself, to be enough based on their ideas and their values, that is a life that is going to be completely devoid of happiness because you're always going to be chasing other people's validation, other people's praise. Other people need to tell you you are enough in order for you to feel like you are enough. And this is massive. So there comes responsibility with parenting, but also, and this is, I'm going to Ximy to share another story with you, but this is the danger of outsourcing responsibility and going from a place of inner authority to seek out outer authority, right? And I want Ximy to share a story you told me about one of your clients that went to a cosmetic surgeon.
Yeah.
This is freaky, but this is what is happening in the world.
Okay. By the way, this is not just an isolated incident. I have heard this so much. And it was, in this particular case, this person went to take a friend or a family member to have some medical procedure done at the plastic surgeon's office. And then after they were done, he looks at this woman and he tells her, "You've got wrinkles. Look, let me show you a before and after picture of this woman, blah, blah, blah. And, look, after I did this and I did that, like her wrinkles disappeared and all that." So this woman comes to me and she tells me, "You know what, before that, yeah, I knew they were there, but they didn't bother me. But then after he said that, I'm seriously considering going to have it done." So what I want you to do is I want you to look at this scenario. You are in a vulnerable position because you're in front of a daddy figure, an authority figure. And this authority figure is basically making you feel self-conscious, okay, about yourself and basically criticizing you so that they can profit off of you. We got to see things for what they are. I don't think that there's anything wrong with making money. It's fantastic. But don't spellcast people, so that you can advance your agenda. And by the way, as I said, that's not the only case. I've known of women who have gone in for breast augmentation and then they start they're naked there, again, in front of this daddy figure, this authority figure, who they surrendered their power to and their bodies to. And then this person starts breaking them down "Oh, we can remove fat from here. We can do this from there. We can do that." What is this? What is this? So I get really passionate about this because, I understand that this is just a side effect of pain. We are all in pain. The people that are doing this, the people that are seeking these procedures, we're all in pain. So that's the first thing. I acknowledged that yesterday. I acknowledge it today, and I am not going to criticize the individuals. We are talking about behaviors. This is what we need to look at. It's not about criticizing a person because we've all been subjected to this programming in one way or another. What we need to question is the programs that we have accepted and how we have surrendered our power to these people to dictate how we need to look and also the things that we need to do to achieve these unrealistic standards. When you look at somebody who has been improved, okay, let's, I don't want to name names, but let's look at some very popular pop culture idols that have had a ton of work done, and the amount of girls that are completely obsessed with them and follow their every single move and want to be just like them. Do you know that I've heard that there are girls that are going in, young girls that are going in to have Botox done so that they can have the perfect selfie? I mean,
and the breast implants.
Yeah, and I'm Colombian, and so breast implants in Colombia, I'm probably just, if Colombian people hear me, I'm speaking blasphemy right now because it's so popular. As a matter of fact, a lot of people would be like, "Oh my God, you're Colombian and you don't have breast implants?" This is how popular it is there. So when girls turn sweet 15, sweet 16, they would give them breast augmentation.
Crazy.
Again, and I'm going to say something, again, with parents, okay? Children will look at the way you feel about yourself. and they will learn that at an energetic level. Okay, and in some cases, some women, you know, like they don't know that they're doing this. Okay, this is why this invitation to heal this within us is so important. But then there are other women that do project the pain to their children. I'm going to give you 2 examples, okay, of clients that I've had. So one lady, and again, the first thing I want to say is I acknowledge their pain, and they don't know how to navigate their pain. I believe that everything that we do that, you know, is hurtful to us or other people typically comes from a place of pain. So that being said, it is not a criticism to the individual. It is an observation about a behavior. All right. So from a psychologist, I was referred a girl. She was around 15 years old. And she was referred to me because she had a very painful relationship with food and body image. So I spoke to this girl, and this girl told me that the mother was heavily pressuring her to lose weight. Now, this girl just probably had like a few pounds on, like she wasn't like obese or anything even remotely close to that. And she told me that that the last, like her mom had her entire life on diets. She hid food from her in the house, and that the last thing that she had done with her was she took her to a doctor that stitched a piece of cloth in her tongue so that she would be forced to be on a liquid diet. Okay? And you can research this. This was very popular in South America. I don't know if they do it in the US, but this was very popular. And this girl was like eating like minute amounts of food, and she had her going to exercise strenuously. What do you think, you know, this does to a child that is being exposed to that? And I'm going to tell you another story about another client. So I was working with this woman, okay? In that case, that was a child. In this case, this is a woman. She was like 26 years old. And she said to me that her mother and her father had basically given her like a number on the scale that she needed to meet. Like that was like, and when she didn't weigh that, like they would sit with her at the dinner table and just look at everything she ate. They would shame her when she would go shopping. And this girl was super petite, but they had her locked onto that weight. And then she said to me, you know, every day when I wake up, the first thing I do is I get myself on the scale. And basically that is what helps me determine how I feel about myself for the rest of the day. If I hit that number, good, I feel good. If I don't hit that number, I'm crushed for the rest of the day. This is what we're doing. Now, the story doesn't stop there. And by the way, I have never weighed a client. I just ask my clients first thing, you know, their height, their weight, just because it's like their assessment forms. But I never weighed a client. I don't ask my clients to weigh themselves. I don't measure my clients. If they want to measure themselves, that's their thing. But I don't request that, okay? Because I don't want people to relate food to weight loss or their exercise to weight loss, because it can become an obsession. All right. Some people may disagree with me. That's perfectly okay. We all have different ways of approaching things and doing things. So then this is the same client, and I received a phone call one day from the mother, okay, of this 26-year-old woman. And the mother basically insults me because I was educating her daughter on the importance of fats in the diet. Okay? This is what we're talking about, the level of control. You know, and when we get into the food section, we're going to be exploring a lot more why people are so controlling about food and these fights that we have about the right diet and the wrong diet and all these things. But these are just some examples of the reality that some people are experiencing in their homes.
All right. I'm going to have to pull the reins in, guys, because it's come out to an hour again. All right. Hemi just doesn't stop talking. I know she's passionate with a lot of information to share.
Really? We share that in common.
So hopefully that's given you a new lens to look at the world through in terms of this whole idea of spell casting and how important, again, remember yesterday I kept stressing, I love what Hemi says, I look good because I feel good. Right? That is so important. You know, we need to use methods that work with our body, not against our body. Right? We need to connect with our inner authority and self-parent. We need to step up and take on the role and responsibility of becoming an expert in ourselves, right? It's one of the most empowering things that we can do. right? Today we touched upon what can go wrong when you outsource responsibility, when you give your power away to people and authority figures external to who you are, and how a lot of the world is actually designed to manipulate us into acting out certain behaviors. They know how to play upon our fears, our fear of rejection, our fear of not being enough, right? Because this is how you drive buying and spending behavior of individuals, right? It's very, very well thought out. Like I said, neuromarketing is a multi-billion-dollar industry. There's a lot of money being spent into how to maximize the buying behavior of the individual. Right? I love learning about that stuff.
And it goes beyond that, by the way. It's not just about buying.
And when you understand that, you understand the control dramas that are acting out in the world, and how we're really, you know, we're more the chess piece than the chess player in our game, or we're more the puppet than the puppet master. So it all comes back to self-parenting. This is how you really find the freedom, and this is how you really grow into your own greatness. Right? This is how you expand your idea of self and actually carve out the life that you want, rather than following like a little sheeple, you know, to everyone else's ideas around what's good, bad, right, wrong, etc.
Through blind obedience, by the way.
Yeah. So hopefully there's been value in that for you guys. Moving forward, like I said, we've got quite a few more interviews coming up. So we're sort of unpacking this bit by bit. And I think the next one we're going to really get more into the fitness industry and talk more about food. Is that correct?
No. We're actually going to be talking about the extreme bodies. We're going to be exploring like all these ideals that women are chasing, and men. And then we will be exploring the extreme measures that women are resorting to achieve those ideals, and their physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual consequences. And today I touched upon one of those extremes, which I was talking about with the stitching of the tongue, but that is nothing compared to what we'll be discussing. So, and this is common, more common than you think. And if you are somebody who does not work in this field, who's like a client, you know, of these things, my invitation to you is become or bring out the journalist in yourself and research everything. Don't believe when somebody tells you something is safe. Just look at all sides of the argument, and then look at the consequence of choice. You know, like, what are the positive consequences? What are the negative consequences? And what consequences am I willing to live with, and which ones am I not? Now, this is so important. I never say to people what to do. I always share the different sides of the argument, again, like a journalist should do, different sides of the argument, so that the individual can connect with the consequence of choice, and they decide what consequences they're willing to live with and which ones they're not. Why? Because we all have different values. And maybe the consequences that somebody's willing to live with are not the consequences I'm willing to live with, and vice versa. So I don't know, and I can't project my views on the world onto people. My whole goal is to invite people to be critical thinkers and to research everything, because guess what? There is no daddy figure looking out for you. You have to become your mother, you have to become your father, you have to become a skeptic, and you have to research and inform yourself, and you need to sometimes go down the rabbit hole and not be scared about what you're gonna find. You know, because oftentimes the truth may seem scary, but I think it's a lot scarier to continue your life under this subconscious spell.
Right. All right. Well, thank you very much, Amanda. So we're going to wrap it up there. Like I said, you know, when you watch this, post questions below, because we will see the questions and we can answer them in the upcoming interviews. So I hope you found value in this. We're trying to unpack this step by step, not to overwhelm people, but show you the different layers that are involved here. All right. So until next time, we'll see you tomorrow. All right.
Thank you so much for your time.
And hopefully we get the little Be Live thing fixed, because it was so distracting having him in a stand beside me like this. All right. All right.
You can't resist my chart.
No, I can't.
That's what it is.
All right, guys. Until next time. Bye.